Hello, friends. Today on Gritty, my guest is Ben O'Brien, hunting marketing manager at YETI Coolers and previously the executive editor at Petersen's Bowhunting. And something I'm excited about, Ben has launched his own podcast called The Hunting Collective. Ben seems older to me than his young age suggests. He's a young chap with an old soul. What I like most about Ben, he's not afraid to speak his mind, even when it's not popular. At the same time, Ben doesn't think he's got all the answers either. He's a man open to new ideas, and I also like that about him too. Recently, Ben took a poll on Instagram. The poll asked, should hunters get rid of the grip and grin? As you can imagine, this question sparked some serious debate, and naturally, I had to ask Ben about it on today's podcast. It's okay though, because Ben's a deep thinker. He can get all philosophical on you, but in a good way. He's been some places, seen some things. He's not naive to the broad world outside of hunting. It's his job at YETI to make sure that hunting is represented in a positive light. In today's modern world, we all have a voice. How do we use it? Join us as we explore this topic and more on today's Gritty Bowmen podcast. Quote, never underestimate the influence of the human spirit. We are all the same in this notion. The potential for greatness lives within each of us. Wilma Rudolph.
If a grip and grin photo can be seen as negative, and it is by a lot of people, then I'm just going to stop doing it because I don't care. I care too much about hunting to be selfish and think like, I got to have this.
In a way, it can sound superficial to the guy that's like, look, I'm not here to run a PR campaign.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yes.
But the truth is, you are.
You are.
If you're hunting and you're outdoors, what you do impacts everybody that also hunts and the future of wildlife. All right, folks, welcome to the Gritty Bowmen podcast. We're at the ATA show. And I am joined by...
Day 3, guys. Day 3, ATA.
Day 3. And I'm joined by Ben O'Brien.
Hey, man.
From YETI.
That's where I'm from.
And we got Jordan Harbertson here.
Yeah.
And you just got back from a hunting trip.
I did. Yeah, Wednesday we got back from Old Mexico. Across the border.
Yeah.
Rented a van and drove across the border like some kind of...
Was there anything shady that happened? Any border issues?
Nothing shady other than just the way it is there.
Yeah.
I mean, and we didn't have... If you wouldn't have known where you were, you wouldn't have thought it was shady. But just, as soon as you cross that border, it's complete shade and utter darkness. Like, it is, like, not to say that Mexico is not a wonderful place, but where we happen to cross... The ironic part is where we happen to cross. There's the wall is there, right? But the wall, you can see through it. It's just a series of bars.
Yeah.
And so you can see it, in Douglas, Arizona, you can see from Agua Prieta, which is the town in Mexico we crossed at, you can see the Walmart through the wall. You can see like the taco. I'm serious.
Are you serious?
When you're in this town of Agua Prieta, which is third world in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
You can look through the wall and see the Walmart and the Golden Arches and the Taco Bell and all the stuff on the other side. So there's this strange thing where I'm like, we could throw a stone to the Walmart. But there's like garbage everywhere and there's mangy dogs running around. So it's a strange environment. And there's no normal looking folks over there in some of those towns. It's nobody like polo shirt and jeans.
Yeah.
Everybody has a hoodie on and looks like they want to chase you down.
Knife you. So
they treated us very kindly. Saying all that, they treated us very well, and we had no problems at all. But it's sketchy. It's a sketchy thing.
I mean, you go into that environment. How many times have you been on this hunt? Have done this hunt? Is this first time?
First time I've done it.
This is the first time. Okay.
Rennell and those guys have been down there like probably 3 or 4 times. So
Okay.
I was just following along. But even then, Steve said, he's like, when we get back across the U.S. Customs and get back across the border, it's a celebration. Like, we did it. But that dude,
we survive.
He enjoys that element of danger.
The adventure.
Oh, yeah. Living
It's
on
almost
the edge.
like doing that hunt's almost like going into grizzly bear country because you never know what you're going to run into.
Yeah.
You always know
You're on
the
alert.
next corner there could be some.
I'm much
Dude in a hoodie.
I am I'm far more concerned about a human predator than an animal predator.
Exactly.
You know.
Yeah, it's less predictable. When you get over there, we were glassing, and you think, you don't know what you're going to see. You don't know what you're going to run into. And we ran into a situation where we're riding out on like day 3 or 4, and there's a big white X on the ranch, made it like a bunch of rocks made into a giant X that you could clearly see from the air. And Steve asks our guide, "What's that for?" And he talks to the other guy in Spanish for a while, and the guy goes, "That's where we put the game cameras to see the deer." I was like, Right. Yep. That's where we put the game cameras.
You see
the
here?
deer.
This is
the X.
Yeah, this is the X. This is where all the deer go. You're like, come on, dude.
You guys are such full of crap.
Yeah. I'm going to the border with Randy Newberg and David Brinker.
That's right. You're headed.
Heard about that.
You're headed that way too.
In a week or two. And so, yeah, Randy's like, it's sketchy. You'll see people come, across the border while you're hunting. You'll see them running. And
living in Texas, and YETI has a ranch. Our founders have a ranch right on the border, 30,000 acres or so. It's a large ranch, and we've seen them cross. You can see 20, 30 at a time cross, and there's a lot of things that go on. And I've talked to the Border Patrol, so the reality. But when you're on the other side, you're just one misstep away from Mexican prison or something worse. So it's a reality that you face over there. But I think if you do it right, we had zero problems. I mean, we were completely safe the entire time, and wouldn't have known any better if you didn't know where you were. You would have thought nothing of it. But it's just not something. It's not something. Not something I do every day.
I like the fact that we're going to be still on this side of the border.
You're all right doing that. You're all right.
You threw out the words Mexican in prison, and I'm like, eh.
Well, we flew into Tucson and rented this Sprinter van. Okay. So it was like 4 or 5 dudes in a Sprinter van driving around Mexico with no help at all. So it would have been a good sitcom.
So what's it like hunting with Ranella? Is this your first time hunting with Steven?
No, I've hunted with Steve a couple times.
Have you?
And I've known him probably not very well, but I've known him for about 8 years or so.
I talked to Rogan about it once. I'm like, and this is fresh off his POW hunt. And he's like, Ranella is an intense man. And that's his answer.
Yeah. There is this, I was talking, so preface this with, there's a Mark Boardman from Vortex. I was talking to him one time. He was just hunting in POW with Steve. And I told Steve this last week. I said, how was the hunt with Steve? He goes, it was rough. He goes, sometimes I just wanted to stop Steve and be like, let's have a sandwich. Let's take a break and eat a sandwich. Let's have a drink of water. And Steve, will legitimately just forget to eat and drink, stuff like that. But Steve, he's a great dude. He's one of my favorite guys to spend time around because you get him in that environment, and there's an intensity about him, but at the same time, man, we laughed our asses off. So
I followed some of your stories and stuff.
We had some laughs.
Good humor.
But I will say, he's got one speed. There's no.
It seems like a one track. He's got a mission and he's got accomplish is the only mission. So I got to go do that.
Very much one speed, and I find that people that are successful like him, in his business life and in the hunting life and all that, they have one speed. There isn't. They're not let's let's get up late and we'll have breakfast and we'll go glass from the close knob. There isn't that. Idea.
I can't picture him coming home, putting his feet up on the couch and flipping on the TV and hitting 2 or 3 regular TV shows.
Just isn't that. He doesn't have that. And I hope he never listens to this, but I'll say that he's intellectually intimidating. It's as smart as you think you might, as many books as you think you might have read, as much history, natural history you think you might know. As a writer, I'd like to think that I have some chops there, but he just dwarfs that.
Which is interesting because I've heard you on a few different podcasts, and I told Jordan, I'm like, okay, so we have Ben O'Brien here today.
You got the Yeti Meister,
and I feel like you're like a philosopher. In fact, I looked up the definition, and it's thinker, theorist, theorizer. I like this one. Theoretician? Theoretician?
Relatively short, bearded fella.
You are a lot younger looking than I thought.
Okay.
How old are you?
32.
Okay. So you 32. That's because you are young.
Yeah, I'm a youngster.
Yeah. So we've had this, I've heard you on Joe's podcast going kind of deep and a few others. And one of the, Jordan and I were talking about this the other day. You put a post up asking the question about trophy, quote unquote,
Like,
grip and grin.
The grip and grin.
That's been a popular one. I got that. I walked in the door. I was in here like one, and this guy came over and was like, "Hey,
are you the a-hole? You're trying to make me drop my pictures?"
Hey, man, I love grip and grin. I was like, cool, bro. Hey, he goes, you know what? I'm a happy guy. I'm like, that's like, bro. I was like, that's cool, man. It's great that you're happy. And I just said, that's just my opinion.
Give us some background on that for people that are listening that aren't familiar with it.
I'm lucky enough to work at a company, and I can't say that I wasn't always this way, but working at Yeti, we run in a lot of circles that aren't, we're out of the hunting bubble most of the time.
Yeah.
I'm the only one at Yeti really that lives in the hunting bubble. My position is hunting marketing manager, and most companies, Hoyt or any of these companies, everybody's in the bubble, right? They're all in the hunting bubble. You're marketing, you're making products for specifically the pursuit that we are passionate about.
Yep.
I happen to work at a place where everybody is smart and passionate, but it's a generalist feeling. And my job, the hunting marketing manager, is to own that community and to own hunting and be the spokesperson, both inside of hunting for Yeti and then inside of Yeti for hunting. So I'm dealing with a lot of people that don't understand this world. They don't understand what we do on a lot of ways, and they don't hunt. A lot of them. Some do, but not a lot do. Mm-hmm. And then we also have managers that are out there in the rodeo world, in the ranch world. We have a beer and barbecue manager. We have an outdoor marketing manager. That's what I'm saying. Is that not the best title in the world? Like, what do you do for a living? I'm the beer and barbecue manager. Like, what? What?
You just put party in that spot.
Yeah, I'm the America marketing manager. And so we have an outdoor marketing manager and fishing. So we all kind of own our worlds.
Yeah.
But what it's forced me to do is step into those other worlds and see through the prism of how they view us, what we are to them.
Right.
And working my previous life in editing and working in hunting magazines, you never step out of that bubble. Or rarely, if ever, step out of that bubble in a professional sense. Maybe in a personal sense, you're at a party and somebody asks you, I'm a non-hunter, you love hunting, tell me. But in a professional sense, you rarely step outside of what I would call our industry community bubble. And so I do that every day. I mean, I walk around in a place where a lot of people don't do what we do, and they have to be a voice for that.
I look at it like, when you deal with a company, for example, like Sitka, there's a bit of an echo chamber.
Yeah.
Because you're hanging out with hunters and you're building products for hunters, and it's specific to that market. You take Under Armour as an example. They're a lot like Yeti in the sense that they have a product that reaches across all boundaries into mainstream.
Yep.
And there's not very many hunting companies that have this massive mainstream market in a smaller hunting market.
Yeah.
And so there's going to be struggles at times because there's just the mainstream doesn't always get us and understand the hunting aspect of this.
And I think I've always also at the same time been interested in the philosophies behind what we do and been able in the ideology of what we do and why we're doing certain things and been able to kind of examine from the outside, that looks a little weird to prop the animal up and clean it off and then sit behind it. I've done it my whole life, and I never questioned it until I was in a room with some people from Patagonia, and they said, "Why do you do that?" And I said, "Well, it's I started saying what we always say, it's a respect thing. You're happy." But then I started looking at the process of you could take a photo of you smiling in the moment, but then an hour later to have took him to a really cool spot and propped him up, turned his head a certain way.
You set your backpack and your bow down and all the stuff in front of it.
Right.
You got your protein bottle. You got this is the supplement feed I use.
Your Mountain Up Slumber. You put that right in front.
Check this out. Just before I shot him, I had this Yeti Rambler in my hand.
Like I said, I think there's an echo chamber though, where
it's groupthink.
It's cultural.
Because before this, I grew up in Portland, just outside of Portland area, in Oregon City. And then went to college. I ended up back in Oregon City, and I worked a corporate job for more than 10 years. And you're working in downtown Portland. There's most of the people in my office were
weird,
gender fluid.
You worked in an office of gender fluidity,
and they were semi, anti-hunting. So whenever, of course, I'd go hunt bears in Alaska and then come back from a trip, and they were actually fascinated about it because I had a good relationship and they valued my opinion. I worked hard in the workplace. I respected their differences. They respected mine, and we had great conversations. But they were in the same boat where they didn't understand. When I came back with like a photo smiling over a dead bear, they're like, what is this?
What are you doing? Yeah.
I mean, and it's confusing, I think. And if you're in the, what'd you say, groupthink or the echo chamber, like you don't.
The bubble.
You don't realize how strange it is.
You don't realize what you're doing and what it represents. You just, and I think we always, like, and I've heard this since I posted that like, for whatever reason, that sacred idea that we have the right to sit behind an animal and get our photo taken.
And tell people about the post.
So I basically just said, look, what is the grip and grin, right? Because if you look back in the history of hunting and how we've kind of represented ourselves through imagery, you look after World War II, hunting was on the rise. People were coming back from World War II, and there was more hunters, and the idea was acceptable. It was an expression at some point of manlyhood at that level. So the Teddy Roosevelt syndrome of like 1 foot on top of the animal or the grip and grin was there. I mean, it existed, but it didn't exist in the same way it exists today. I feel like right around the early 90s, late 80s, when you got real tree monster bucks and some of these ideas that that the commodity, like if you shoot a big deer with my bow or with my gun or wearing my camo, you're a better hunter, my products work better. The idea that the commoditization of the idea of killing an animal, I feel like started this trend of
it industrialized the industry,
and a bit changed how we view things.
Yeah.
And so I remember I came up watching Real Tree Monster Bucks and Hunter Specialties and those DVDs where it was like $20 in 20 minutes or whatever it was,
right.
$20 in an hour, and then I was excited about that. And so you start that rolls into the hunting television, and hunting television becomes the same thing. It's more about sponsors and
well, about that same time, I think it also shifted into inches, right? This focus on size of animal.
The fetishizing of this. I don't have a problem with saying I killed a 110-inch buck. I have a problem with the fetishizing of the idea of that thing. Like, the thing is fine, because a mature deer is partly in part of the way our model conservation works. A mature deer is what you want to kill, but the fetishizing of the rack and the reasoning is a problem for me. And I only really realized that once I got to talking to people that weren't inside of that bubble.
But even if so we had Logan on last night, Logan Ross from Rock House, and Erin Hitchens. And she killed her elk this year, and we got the story from her, and she was saying that what surprised her actually was people saw her photos with the elk, her smiling over a dead animal, and she's very reluctant to come into hunting in the first place. It took her a long time, and she didn't know how she'd handle killing an animal. She's hunted for a while, and she hasn't been able to do it. And finally, this moment occurs. She takes this photo. And she's come from that world where people don't understand like a grip and grin. And she herself did not understand a grip and grin. And then here she is smiling with this elk and stuff. And now people are saying, why are you smiling? And why did you do this? And I don't understand. This isn't what you're about, this kind of thing. And she was like, I can't understand, They said, I can't understand this. And she said, I can now. And it's not about the inches. It's not about me like Teddy Roosevelt style, like I am the man and I've done this imagery. She's like, this is one of the happiest moments for me of just, and where the world just, it's something about this, my elk at this moment. And yes, I killed it, but it's so much deeper than that. But here's the thing. She described it well, and you can feel through her whole story what this animal meant to her.
Yeah, because
and what this moment meant to her, and the whole representation, because for her it's been a semi unachievable achievement that she achieved, right? Like it's like
that's a hard thing to do,
and so it represents all that. But her friends looking at it only see someone smiling over a dead animal.
What a ridiculous problem to have. That it's a life-changing experience to do that. I just took a new hunter out to do a film, and she had the same questions. Like, oh my God, this is the best thing. How do I tell people? I was like, that's our problem. You take this awesome, enriching experience, and then you boil it down to this thing that people don't understand. That's the problem.
Because it's a dilemma. Because she wants to share that moment. Because basically, you and I get it. We can see her photo, and we can be like, wow. And we're touched. Yeah. But the wider world, that's not what they see. So do we let it go? Do we keep it?
You got to let it go. I think.
So tell me about your post.
So
sorry to ramble on.
No, I think that's a good segue.
That's why people care about it, because that's why everybody got all up in arms a little bit. Not up in arms. I got a lot of support. It was like, I think probably 50-50.
I'll be honest. I said, get rid of it. And then I went back like 5 minutes later and said, no, you gotta keep it. Keep it. And then I went back again and said, get rid of it. Like 3 times.
I think, so my post just said, look, we have, hunting has a PR problem.
Yeah.
I'll take it. This is going to be a longer story, but fly fishing to me, right? Mm-hmm. Fly fishing has morphed over the years into primarily a catch and release activity, right? That to me, and no one, I've never had anybody come and be like, damn, that fly fishing, I don't know why people do that. Mm-hmm. The imagery and the way that fly fishing has been presented in our culture, there's very few people that would sign a petition against fly fishing. But in the act of fly fishing, you are, for your own pleasure, catching an animal, ripping a hook in its lip, and then putting it back in the water.
Stressing it out. Right.
Stressing it out, messing with it, hooking it, put a hook in it, and then putting it back in the water. But because the PR, because the idea, then the conversation around fly fishing has been so upper crust, nobody really questions what's underneath. So in hunting, the problem that we have is that we haven't been able to break that crust. We haven't been able to show the good stuff as much as we've shown, represented some things that aren't as good. Mm-hmm. And so I just said, my point was, if a grip and grin photo can be seen as negative, and it is by a lot of people, then I'm just going to stop doing it, because I don't care. I care too much about hunting to be selfish and think like, I got to have this. This is a thing I got to have. I don't got to have that. All I got to do is take the same photo and just not smile and make it look more natural and respectful to the animal. That's all I have to do. And if I can help out hunting by doing that little thing, I'm going to do it. Mm-hmm. I think everybody else should do it too.
You know, and I think you bring up a really good point.
How dare you tell me what to do?
I tell you what, though, I think you bring up a really good point. In fact, we talked about this with Donnie Vincent. It was said that the world or hunting was going to end, and a species was going, elk, mm-hmm. for example, was going to be extinct.
Yeah, you've heard Steven say this many times. Where
and
he's
we have to say, we're going to, in order for them to survive and to continue to thrive on this earth, we're going to have to stop hunting them. What would your decision be as a hunter? Would you say, no, I love pursuing that animal and I'll pursue it until the day it dies? Or would you do what I believe is true conservation and true hunting and say, I'm going to put the bow or put the gun down?
Yeah. You have two choices. You can either stop hunting and have elk live forever, or keep hunting and take a chance.
And I think every single one of
and he's like, every time, if I had that guarantee, I'd give up hunting forever.
Every time. And I believe every single person on this podcast would do that. I literally, the day he posted that up, I had just posted kind of a grip and grin of my whitetail.
That's why everybody's like, I just posted gripping you back.
So I'm like,
it was directed at me.
Yeah. And I started to kind of internalize and say, Jordan, what are you doing, or what am I doing a good job at representing to those who don't understand who we are, why I did this, and did I put enough context around this? And, I looked at my picture, and truthfully, and I can say this, and I take some ownership for it. I said, I think my comment was like, I had an incredible time in Oklahoma with Levi Morgan, laughed so hard, had a great hunt, yada, yada, this and that. And it was kind of to his point, like the context of it wasn't enough to really help someone on the outside say, you know, man, you really were reverent or respected that animal, or you know how you hunt. So I guess I'm saying this too, is that like if this helps the other side and this helps our industry and helps us, you know, rise to that crust, is showing maybe a little bit more reverence and more context around the images and stories that we're telling. If that helps our bubble and our community and those coming into it, should we do it?
Yeah, I think we should. I just think the problem
that
we have...
You're moving too fast for me.
The problem we have, here's the biggest problem that we have. Everybody in this room values the life of these animals more than anyone else. Like that you value the life of that thing way more than someone who hasn't
Who's out of touch,
doesn't live with it, doesn't go out with it every day. You value
doesn't
that
eat
more.
it.
Our problem has been historically the display of that value for life. Like we do not display the value we have for these animals well enough.
No,
in my opinion,
I think we're much more jaded in the sense that we can watch like a kill shot reel, 5 animals drop in 60 seconds,
$20 in 20 minutes,
and it's like
30 turkeys
in 30 seconds.
Why is it always number based? Like 17 and a half kills.
But
one wounded buck and 17 other dead ones.
But yes, there's this thing where the animal is when I see that, I can't see for the life of me the actual appreciation that you feel for the animal. Yeah. And I know there's people who show that, but also do all sorts of things to protect habitat and to, invest in conservation and make a difference. So it's like, but I think you're right when it comes to perception. I had Derek Olthius on the podcast, and he's
Derek is
big time fly fishing
rock star, dude.
And we were talking about the fly fishing industry and how they present it to the public, just like what you're describing. Yeah. And I have one caveat before I explain this, though. In the hierarchy of animals,
right,
fish don't have a soul the way a cuddly bear does or a deer. So there's that as well.
Right.
Like it's like, but that's a fish.
Right.
Like, dead fish,
that's the way it was explained to me by some fly fishing. Like there's a lot of stuff that goes into it, and there's a lot of fly fishermen that have thought it through very. So I have nothing against fly fishing.
We have a little bigger hurdle in that sense,
absolutely.
But there are some things I think we can walk away from. So to learn from them and use it in our own media presence. And I say this all the time, or have more so over this past year. If as we create and publish content, if that content is instead of directed at your hunting buddy, your buddy down the road, your friends and all that, if it's actually directed towards someone who is actually somewhat opposed to hunting, and that's how you frame it, you're going to produce things differently.
Yeah.
And the fact is, our reach no longer is isolated to a magazine that you have to purchase from the store or a channel on TV that you have to get and directly go to. In fact, it's in everybody's face all the time. Yep. And so now when you create content, I just don't feel like you can put it up in the way you did in the echo chamber in the past to your group thing. Now you have to put it in a different context where it's like, this is for the person who opposes what I do.
Yeah.
So let's make sure that I create it in the right way.
And that's what I would say, too. Like, the $20 in 20 minutes is okay in the frame of hunters because hunters understand what's going on.
We understand the bigger picture.
Right. It's not – that's what part of the post was, too, is like when when the switch flipped on social media, the things that we did inside our bubble all of a sudden became public for the public's perception. Mm-hmm. And that's when we have to start changing our behavior. In some ways, I mean – We're living in this community that gets smaller by the year. Every number that you look at, it went from like 14 million in 2011 to 11 million in 2016. It's getting smaller, and the public perception is waning. I mean, that's the truth.
It's really tough to tell because I see a lot of progress made, like
I'm
the delisting of grizzly bears and the way that a lot of, you got Joe Rogan and Ranella and different Shane Mahoney, different people really telling a better story than we did for ourselves in the past.
I gave a thing last year at SHOT Show about the future of hunting where I was on a panel with Shane.
Uh-huh.
And the conversation came to, like, are you happy or are you positive or negative about the future of hunting? I said, I'm 100% positive because I live in a world with badasses that are telling their story in a way that they go on Joe Rogan and 1 million people can hear that.
Right.
And it's way more transformative than we think it even is for those folks. And hunting is an enriching thing to go do. And the more people that I introduce to it, the more people I find that their lives are changed by it. So we're in a good spot. But at the same level, look at the grizzly bear in British Columbia.
Exactly.
It's not a right to go hunt. It's a privilege. And the privilege only is maintained by the public's perception of our good for the natural world.
And it's always based on the hunter's motives, 100%. It's not that you killed a bear. No. It's why you killed the bear.
Which is an incredibly complex thing to break down.
Totally.
And that is a socially unacceptable. That is why that ban came in place. We're stopping this because it is socially not accepted by our community up here.
I want to say though, like, there's been a huge uprising in public support of hunting due to a lot of the influencers that are out there and the message that hunters at large are waking up and presenting. So I'm very optimistic about that. There's still some very, very ideological people out there who there's no justification for killing an animal no matter what you do, or at least a wild animal. And that group will always oppose us. There will always be that ideology out there. And
Ranella explains it very well. He is, as a hunter, he cares about the idea of deer. Right? The idea of the deer, what they mean to this landscape, what they mean to our history, what they
population
mean
as a whole.
Yeah, he cares about the deer as an idea, as a thing. The animal rights guy cares about the individual deer. The deer that is in front of them that they can see. And that's where it comes back to that point. I would sacrifice my hunting right or my hunting privilege for the deer to survive, right? For that deer species. The animal rights guy cares about the life of that single deer, which makes his ability to care for the entire population of deer less. Like, the ability to care for the whole when you're only caring about the one thing is not pragmatic enough of a way of seeing.
It's not holistic.
Yeah. If you've been outside and you spent time outside, that idea of the one deer's life being sacred doesn't make sense. Things get eaten. They go into the ground. Things grow. That's how life eats life. That's all.
Right.
We know that.
You can't. But see, that's the problem. Like, that is hard to. Like you just said a minute ago, killing an animal is complex. It's and then a photo or an image that accompanies that activity, because the what you did is so complex. Like, it's not just for the meat. Right. A lot of hunters and a lot of people, human beings in general, want to boil it down to a one-dimensional thing. I'm a meat hunter. I only hunt because I need to feed my family. Well, there's so much more behind it, and it's such a misleading statement. But it's like, where do you go? And back to the Derek thing, he's talking about, he goes, if you look at fly fishing and some of the most popular fly fishing, Instagram, like social media presence, he's like, we take photos. He's like, my face isn't in the photo. Or if it is, it's like, there's so much bokeh that it's blurred out, right? He's like, when I take a photo, it's not about me. It's not about me and this fish I caught and all that. He's like, I really want people to see the fish. I mean, that's the thing, is celebrate this beautiful animal. And so, cause I'm like, Derek, it bugs the crap out of me that your hat's always down here and you hippie fly fishermen are always like, it's like, dude, I'm dying here.
Yeah.
And it seems so like cheesy and it bugs me. Like, just smile at the camera. And he's like, but Brian, I'm trying to artistically trying to take myself out of it.
Yeah.
And really celebrate the animal. And I think it's made me think about the photos that I take in a grip and grim type setting. what kind of shot am I capturing of this?
Yeah.
And am I celebrating me as much as I am the animal? Because when I talked to Shane Mahoney, he said, back in the day when we had really good outdoor riders, they wrote about the animal and the experience and the adventure. And now we kind of have some outdoor riders that tend to be like, I am amazing, and I did this, and I climbed this mountain, and I shot this animal, and I worked so hard, and it's like the animal's hardly part of the.
Yeah.
It's just the thing that died at the end.
Yeah. What makes a guy? I always think about what makes somebody in the hunting world that I admire. Like what builds out this admirable figure for me, and I think it's just somebody who thinks about it a lot and understands that it's not easy, that it's hard and complex, and that we're doing something that I think we don't even fully understand at some level. Our motivations, I believe most hunters don't fully understand their motivations.
Yeah.
I feel like they get wrapped up in the minutia of, am I fit enough? Can I shoot this bow far enough? Is my gear good enough? Do my friends enjoy time outside with me? Do I have enough time? Am I balancing my family? You're thinking about all those things, but you're not thinking about the totality of your action. And that's only natural. That's not a.
I don't think you have to go that deep. I think you simply have to ask yourself one question. Anytime you're putting anything out there, is what's my motive?
Yeah, what's my motive?
Who is this for?
Who's this
why,
for?
Why am I doing it?
It always comes back to your why. Why am I doing
because
this?
if you're doing it because, like, I want to ensure the future of hunting and this animal, and I believe in conservation, well, your content will shift naturally if that's the motive.
Just recently, we've got the Western Hunting Expo that's coming up. And Brian's putting together a film on his mountain goat hunt that him and Aaron went on. And we're going to do a movie premiere on Thursday night. I'll talk a little bit later about that, but for Yeti being a part of that. But also, we're doing a film, too, my film from my elk hunt. And Brian asked me, he says, well, let's do some voiceover for that, or let's figure what that message is, because it was a pretty emotional moment. It wasn't the prettiest one, the Primo's moment. I had to unload my quiver to help expire and end this animal's life, and I had to watch it expire right in front of my eyes, and that just wasn't pretty. But it was emotional, and it was reverent, and it was good. So all of a sudden, I went to that place, and I said, Brian, okay, well, this was my first elk with a bow. It was amazing. So I start telling him, it was an accomplishment for me, and I had this idea, this next ridge of my life, and he stopped me and he said, Jordan, it's not about that. I don't think that's the message of this. I think the message of this, Jordan, it's not about you. It's about the reverence that that I saw sitting right next to you, that you had, and the emotions that were expressed that some people needed to see.
Yeah.
And we need to focus on the life of that animal and that experience and how it touched you and what it meant to you. All that other stuff is byproduct. And I'm sitting there on the phone. I'm like, dang it.
You're right again.
Dang it, you're right.
Son of a bee.
And that's what I love about Brian is, and what I appreciate about the both of you as individuals that I feel like are trying to change that perspective. You're not trying to cause a riot. You're not trying to say you guys can't do this. You're just trying to ask a question, but you're also trying to say what is motive and why are we doing this, and let's start speaking. As we speak online and do these things, let's just be conscious of this idea that when we say things, let's understand why we're doing it and what it's about, and so that those people on their side understand that too.
And I think, in a way, it can sound superficial to the guy that's like, look, I'm not here to run a PR campaign.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yes.
But the truth is, you are.
You are.
If you're hunting and you're outdoors, what you do impacts everybody that also hunts and the future of wildlife.
And if you think that it doesn't, if you think, hey, I only got a couple thousand followers, or maybe I only have 100 followers, right? Maybe within that 100 followers are those people that are engaged in your content. There may be 5 people, there may be 10 people, but they are people.
If you go out and you spear bear, it's gonna impact
everyone.
There's a great point. That's a great point. That one right there is. And I was talking to Shane Mahoney in that Future of Hunting seminar, and I just said, and they said, well, what is the thing that hunters have going for them for the future? I said, well, there's 14 million of us that all have a voice. If you could somehow collect all those voices together and get everybody to understand that this thing is it's great. It's enriching. We all love to do it. But it only takes one or two. But for some reason, there's a lot of people out there that aren't in our community that are looking for things to point at to say why we shouldn't do this. Now, I don't know why that is. I haven't been, studying it long enough to realize, to see why that paradigm shift happened or what went down. But I can recognize that problem and say that, if everyone understands that this is an issue at some level, there's a perception issue going on, then everybody could come together and decide we're going to help fix it in these tiny little ways and give up a little bit of what we have always done to change a little bit of what will happen in the future.
Right. I think you're giving those people who have an ideology, an agenda to just destroy hunting. The person that cares about the individual over the masses, that they're just looking for anything that they can get their hands on. And if you give them ammunition, they dump us. Yeah. Last night there was an article on CNN, and it's titled. It just came out, and of course people sent it to me, and it says trophy hunting: killing animals to save them is not conservation. And it's a video of a gentleman who just shot a black rhino. I think it came out yesterday, and in the video he talks about how it's conservation. But the whole written article on CNN is all about how all these opposing opinions that say basically Kenya's got it figured out in Botswana, and they don't. The animals are in all-time decline. It's flat out just absolute. I read the whole thing, and it's absolute garbage. And it's a big fat lie. And so I'm like, and the guy consented to have the crew on so he could share his story, and I'm like, CNN? And so he did this collaboration, and they took the quotes that made him look bad. They took the quotes that made hunting look bad. They have an agenda. And they took what he did, and they put it in the light that didn't really tell our story. And there's people out there that are doing that. Yeah, and so
that trophy documentary that CNN did here recently, I thought was a fantastic documentary. The way they build it out was fantastic. But one thing that I thought was hilarious is the way that they decided to talk about hunting, inside of that. It was very much the same kind of couch. This he wants to get his big five, and he lives in a house full of dead animals. Right. But
it's so easy.
We make it so easy.
Exactly. That's what I'm getting at. We make it so easy for our story to be manipulated.
That guy was a living cartoon character and didn't even know it. They did the whole gripping. And what's funny is they did a whole grip and grin where he has a lion, I think he shoots. And he's cleaning it off and setting it up, and the guy puts a stick in its mouth and opens its mouth up, and they're playing this do 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 this really funny music that makes he seem like a clown. He's brushing its hair, and and it's just it's that. Even though I know what they were trying to do, the way they were trying to frame hunting, and I think the reason why they choose Africa for that is because it is such a I think 75% of the hunting dollars going to Africa come from the States.
Yeah. That's what it said in there.
Something like that.
75%.
And that's true. So we have a big responsibility when it comes to wildlife in Africa, even though I wish we didn't. I wish we did not.
It makes it hard, though, to present the right image if we're putting things out there in this way.
They're choosing that. That's why they don't choose North American game.
Yeah.
Because they're choosing this environment that is it's a toxic. I always say, Africa is a toxic environment for wildlife. There's no no economic structure that allows the people that live there to value the animals they live around. And also the animals they live around like to eat them sometimes.
It's not like here.
It's not. If there were 40,000 lions in America.
Or grizzlies.
If
they were just
walking
every
around.
Corner.
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to California is a great example. In California, you cannot shoot mountain lions. It's illegal to shoot a mountain lion. But you can go with a howitzer and shoot 40 turkeys. I don't know what it is, but they don't care about the turkeys. They say, oh, there's a lot of those things. You just kill all the ones you want.
Right.
Because I had a buddy say, you can come. I think you can kill 4, but I don't know. I think maybe 6 or 8. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I was like, well, thank God they're protecting the mountain lions, but don't give too many things about the turkey.
Yeah.
So it just goes to like the value of the animal, and I think that those CNN folks have used the way that we've personified African wildlife, and they've used the way that there's no value system for wildlife in Africa against hunters, and we play right into it. Yeah. We go walking right over there and talk about the $350,000 we gave to conservation, and we walk right into the trap every time.
I do think it's changing. It's getting better, but it's a serious threat. Like this whole CNN thing is. I mean that like I showed this to Dwayne last night. My buddy Dwayne, he's like, man, that content on that platform, right? It just reaches so many people.
Yeah.
And it's so destructive, and it's such a poor. It's just misinformation on a grand scale. Yeah. Reaching a broad public, and so it's really disappointing. And you feel at times like, man, I feel like hunting just took a big punch in the face.
I think we did, and I think I was talking to some folks that are in the outdoor industry, not ours, like we call the outdoor industry, the actual recreational, user of outdoors, and we were talking, and they said a couple things that was interesting to me. One was they were out and out against all predator hunting all the time. Predator hunting was something they could never get behind across the board. And my reaction to that was that, like, if you ever talk to anybody who knows how, like, managing wildlife and the biology and the science behind that, you would never say, in its totality, predator hunting is wrong. You just never say that. But they've come to that opinion.
Yeah.
Without really knowing regionally and locally and all the things.
That's why I say if you're putting content out there as a hunter, like you said, there's 14 million of us. And our greatest influence is it within your own social circle, right? Mm-hmm. So the more hunters that can actually communicate that story when they post something whenever they post, you have an army of people giving an accurate image of hunting and an explanation, taking the time to actually explain all these concepts behind conservation, and they're multifaceted, and you can just kind of pick and choose and go for it. I think it's powerful.
Well, we think about camp. I was, and the same folks we were talking to, you think about campers. And I was like, you guys kill camp? And they're like, yeah. And I was like, when I think of campers, I think of a family out. Like they got a van, they pull up, they're all camping, having a great time. What do you think about? They're like, we think about backcountry campers. I'm like, okay, we're just explaining our ideas of what campers are. Now, if I didn't like camping for some reason, would I just say, like, campers all litter? All campers do is go out and throw trash out in nature.
Get drunk
and throw crap. They're just out there just throwing bottles all over the place. And I said, that's what you do with hunting. That's what you do with hunting. You say, oh, hunters? Oh, they're all trophy. Oh, they're all trophy hunters, and they all want to go to, all of them, even though they can't afford it, want to go to Africa and shoot a rhino in the face. Like that's what their idea of hunting was. And that's what really got me thinking about the public relations issue. Yeah. It is the idea that to them, we were campers that all littered.
Yeah.
They didn't know anything about Pittman Robertson. They didn't know anything about our model of conservation and how these wildlife populations have been propagated over the last 100 years.
Yeah.
But they did know about trophy hunting, and they did know about Africa, and they did know about predator hunting and wolves and bears. They didn't know anything about the good things that we're a part of, and that's what got me thinking about all this stuff.
And I think we can have that conversation. Everybody should take on that responsibility that engages in taking a life, bringing it home, eating it, and so forth. So one of the other things that recently I did a podcast where we talked about words, the power of words, talking about getting rid of some things. The word trophy and sport are two things I want just to be gone.
Yeah.
Can
we let's talk about harvest too. Let's talk about that.
So that's
exactly the next.
You go in there?
That's where we're going, bro.
Because Ranella wrote that piece on the word kill or the word harvest. And, he talked about how use words, the words are powerful, and say what you mean. And I read through it and stuff, and I've been on both sides of it. But I got to say, I don't agree with that.
You don't agree with that?
I do not agree with that one.
That. All right.
So,
go ahead.
So, in the article, Ranella talked about, in some ways, like, the word kill describes what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Okay? You went out and you took a life. It was over. Finito. it's done. Like the animal is gone. Okay. When we use the word harvest, we're kind of pussyfooting around the actual action, right? Like, and harvest denotes crop. Like you go out there and you're bringing in a crop, and so why are we applying that definition to an animal, right? And it's not doing us any favors. And when I read it, I was like, oh, I see your perspective. But then I was like, but I don't think the broad public sees or hears it that way. And I don't think the word kill actually, I'm not against it, but I don't know that it actually helps us. And this debate goes on among hunters time to time. We had Logan on the podcast yesterday, reluctant to be in hunting, blah, 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 the whole story, right? Kills her first animal, cries a lot. Okay, this is someone who is in the other world, has just barely kind of dabbled in ours now. She's in it. And she's like, I can't use the word kill. I don't like to use the word kill. And Aaron's like, yeah, so she'll always use harvest. And I'm like, I actually like the word harvest myself. And I said, I rebel against the definition that harvest is for crops. Like, because you go and look up some Urban Dictionary, modern definitions and stuff, and it also says like harvesting, reaping, going out and getting an animal and bringing it back. You can harvest an animal just like you can harvest a crop. And for me, when I hear the word harvest, I think it's the whole picture.
Right.
So if I say kill, it's like, it's all about this kill. When I say harvest, it's saying I'm going out, I'm getting something for future use later that I'm reaping, that I'm utilizing. So it's not just I go out and kill things. It's I go out and kill things and then bring them into my home and utilize them. It's a full term that for me in my mind says I value wildlife. I value the resource. I value it as a food source. I value it. Kill just says circle of life ended for this animal.
Sure.
So for me, it's incomplete. It doesn't quite say fully what it means to me to go out and kill. The harvest is like I said, it's all encompassing. It's this whole thing where I'm not just focused on the kill, but I'm focused on valuing it as this thing that I'm using for later use.
I think you're 100%. I think you're right. And I would say, like, just as a point of, like, exactly how I think about it. I harvest the meat, I kill the animal, right?
Yeah.
The harvest is the removal of the meat from the body of the animal. The killing is the taking of its life.
I don't want to pussyfoot around that either.
No.
I think you need to be animals die so you can eat. Life eats life.
Yeah, right.
That's a common.
So here's, I think, what happened in that. I never read Renella's article, but him and I have talked about it. So.
Yeah.
I think harvest. My problem is I believe harvest became a thing because people were trying to mask the word kill. I think harvest was developed by some writer or some editor or some hunting media member that wanted to gloss over.
It was the PC thing to do.
Yeah, if I say, I can't say kill because people go, ooh. But if I say harvest.
I would say, when you say something, I would say hunting TV.
Yeah,
right?
Maybe that.
The network said, no using the word kill.
So that's
something
my biggest problem with the word harvest is its genesis. The genesis of the use was to cover up the thing, right?
Yeah.
So that's my first problem with it. I don't want to overuse the word kill just to be like, yeah, kill stuff. Kill stuff.
Man, Brian's killing.
I also think that I've talked to guys like Andrew Zimmern and guys like that in interviews in my past lives where they would compare the harvesting of a deer's backstrap to the plucking of a ripe tomato, right? To the harvesting, to the growing and the harvesting of the ripe tomato. Yeah. And I agree with that too. But my point is, the point I make is it did not grow out of the ground. You went to a place, you didn't put it there, right? With the crops, you put them there. You know where they are, you harvest.
Yeah.
With an animal, you're going to a place that does not belong to you and taking away a thing that you did not put there. And so in that way, you did not harvest the animal in of itself. You harvested the meat once you killed the animal. And so all I would say is just be clear about the use. When you use harvest, you're like, man, I harvested these backstraps, or I killed the animal and I harvested the meat. I feel like that is a proper way to think about it.
I see what you're saying. I kind of think I talked to Jordan about this too. I feel like I sort of planted the deer and the elk there because I participate in conservation. Yeah. And so I think we are stewards over this place. And harvest then denotes that as well. Like, we are stewards over it. We manage the wildlife, and I went out and I harvested a piece of it. And I see what you're saying about the genesis of it, because I think, okay, I get no doubt, 20 years ago when people started saying harvest instead of kill, I was like, that's lame. And my uncle and I had this conversation. I'm like, really? Come on. But now I've come the other way, and I feel like in some ways, to me, the article is too late, because it's sort of like the word sport and trophy. Sport was like sporting chance, giving the animal a fair chase opportunity. Now you look it up in Wikipedia, and mainstream media sees sport as killing animals for fun. Mm-hmm. That's the definition. Mm-hmm. So that term's been hijacked. And I feel in some ways like harvest, now it's been hijacked in a way where it means what I'm describing. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And in mainstream, that's kind of how they hear it and see it. I think when I hang out with all these paleo folks and these CrossFitters and stuff, and they hear harvest, they love the sound of it.
Yeah.
If I say kill, it just sort of is like, I don't know if I like hunting.
Yeah.
And so I'm not so sure that it's actually, but I always emphasize the other part of it, though. Like, I think you can still use the word harvest to denote all this, but I think you're not doing us any favor if you don't talk about life eats life. Mm-hmm. And so I like what you're saying when you're like, kill, harvest.
There's a weird balance we've got to strike, right? So at one point, like, if people are listening to this, like, at one point he says we have to watch what we say. I know. Son of a bitch. He came on here, and the first thing he said was, we got to watch our image, guys. Hey, be careful.
It's not me. Watching. It's Ben O'Brien saying all of it.
He's saying, be careful with your image. Watch out. But then at the next thing he says, say kill. They won't like it, but say it anyway. And there's some truth to that. But
we're talking in circles.
In circles, boys. I just think that, like, I want to represent it factually. Like, this is what's happening. I want to represent actually what's happening. I don't want to gloss over some of the tougher parts, because I feel like if I say kill, people get offended by that. That's what I actually did, right? Yeah. I actually killed something. So I want to represent it factually, but respectfully. So I don't want to use terms or things to hide what I'm doing. So I'm still going to post a picture of me and the dead deer. I'm just going to change the way that looks in my mind, like the way that I've thought through it. I'm going to make it less about me, more about the animal. And I'm also just always going to include the kill as part of the story and not hide from the word kill.
Yeah.
And so even my own thoughts about how I've tried to change what I do are complex and sometimes run up against each other. and that's the hard thing about this conversation, is that it doesn't work for everybody.
Yeah.
I've recently had this thing where we can't show. We did this deal at YETI. We have a waterfowl film where it was just like, boom, dead duck. Boom, these ducks are coming in, they're just folding, and the faces are flying off. And then in the next level, like if we did an elk film, we couldn't show the actual killing of the elk, right? We got to flip to the dead animal. And so I just keep saying, that duck is as valuable to me as that elk. Like, I don't put more value on one animal than the other. Because if you ever spend any time outside, you're thinking, like, they all work together.
Yeah.
All these things are part of a greater whole. So it's just complex. We're just complex people. And I try to take it situation by situation. I just told people, you didn't harvest the animal. You did not. Mm-hmm. You just, in its factual sense, you did not harvest that thing. And the idea of it, the idea of what you're doing, the idea of the pursuit that you're talking about, yes, you did harvest it. Yes, it was you're part of a greater
thing. And it's funny, like when I look it up, like certain dictionaries really just mention crop.
Yeah.
Other dictionaries mention the harvest of animals.
Here we are.
And it's like, well, I think that term is kind of changed. In the modern, like more colloquial, the urban dictionaries kind of grab onto this. And so it's sort of isn't quite the same.
I think it comes down to all things in moderation.
But I think it kind of comes down to, again, motives.
That's what I mean, though.
Because I think David, I think that if there's a if your motives are to make a difference and to share the hunting lifestyle in the right way. That's different than, look at me, I'm awesome.
Yeah.
And
that's why I say
the rest of it kind of flows.
I just appreciate thinkers. Like, I appreciate someone that goes afield and thinks and thinks and thinks about what he's doing, what other people are doing, why they're doing it. Like, I just appreciate that.
I'll tell you what was it like at the end of the poll was like 80%, I ain't giving up my grip and grin.
Oh, yeah. Nobody wants to give their grip and grin up. You can't challenge people like that. I'm an idiot. You got to walk them into it.
But I think I'm glad you brought it up, and I'm glad that it was, that you put it out there. I'm with you. I'm not into the grip and grin, and I've done a ton of them, right?
All of us have. And
this year, like 6 months ago, I was like, that's what I do.
Yeah, and
that's
think
what I did. And I just kind of changed my thing.
I feel like people listening to this podcast, like, don't. Yeah, exactly. There's literally grip and grin. Right? Can I see that? Just we want to show you guys this. He's talking like, don't make it feel like like you guys are holding that. No, there's
look at that.
There's a little grip.
That's
and
a
grin
cool
right
grip and grin
that's
right
a nice
there.
Goat.
Great goat. But guys,
you could make one of these with me too. Like,
we're gonna make one of them. I hope the overtone of this is felt that like we're not sitting here trying to say or make anyone feel guilty. No. That is, if you walk away from this podcast and you feel that I don't feel like you got the message of the discussion. What we are all here saying and what we are all thinking or discussing is let's be conscious of why we are doing what we do in everything we do. You always should know why you're doing what you're doing, but when we're representing this community, let us be conscious of how we are doing it and why we are doing it. And if we can do something as simple as that, just like Ben just said, when you're outside and you're just thinking, he loves thinkers. I love thinkers too. I'm a big thinker. But I
hate non-thinkers.
Yeah, if you don't think,
I hate people that don't think.
I can't stand people that just don't think. No, but I just feel like that if we can do some simple things, it's not drastic. We're not sitting here submitting to everyone and taking the gallon and being, all right, orders in and it's over. It's, guys, just be conscious of the way in which you can represent from any level of impact or any level of influence of what we're doing. I'll tell you this, that post, and you joke, 80-20,
it was like more like 96-4.
Maybe I think by the end it grew even more.
Me and my 4% over there.
You changed my perspective.
You
made me think deeper about what I was doing, and I looked at some of my posts, and I will be honest with all of you. Some of my posts were directed more about look at my personal accomplishment and look at what I did. And I'm not saying that is a bad thing. I'm not saying there's room for that. But I'm saying this. I took a look at myself, and I haven't posted much lately ever since you posted that because I'm really trying to.
Everybody's afraid now.
I'm not guilty, but I'm like, you know what, Jordan? I'm going to look at my messaging. I'm going to look at my content. I'm going to think deeper into what can I do to help? Because I'll be honest, with my sphere of influence, and I don't feel like I have any significant sphere of influence, but I get messages a lot from non-hunters.
Yeah.
And I get messages from people, and I have friends that are non-hunters. I have people in my family, direct family, that are not hunters. Not everybody in the Harbison family or part of the Harbison family are hunters. And so I sometimes just get caught in the bubble. Like everybody just gets what I do and what I'm about. But I just think this discussion was awesome.
Yeah.
I love
having it.
I love having it, and I hope everybody listening to it appreciates it, and don't walk away from this feeling like that we don't like non-thinkers. We love thinkers, and we don't
hate this non-thinkers.
People with grip and grins.
Yeah. But I feel like I'm glad you came on the show. It's long overdue, Ben.
Thanks for having me.
There needs to be more of these.
I appreciate the theoretician in you.
I try. I try. I'm incapable at some level, but I think a lot of people enjoy the fitness aspect of hunting. A lot of people enjoy the meat aspect, cooking the game.
Adventure.
I think adventure. I enjoy all that, but I think I always just lean. I love these conversations of the philosophies and ideologies. Like that's what I think is what strikes me about this thing because it is so complex.
It's life
so
and death.
many people have an opinion about it, and it's so many people think differently. And so I guess maybe more recently I'm just willing to be wrong in a lot of people's eyes, just to say like, hey, I've thought about this a lot lately, and here's what I came to the conclusion that this is what I think. And
the world didn't change because everybody thought and the same way.
Yeah.
Well, but I also think being thoughtful is important.
Yeah.
Because it influences it influences everything we do.
Especially in the age of social media, being thoughtful. You know, the bear spearing thing was a good example of just be thoughtful. Just be thoughtful. You can do it, but be thoughtful.
Yeah.
You know something cool, Brian?
Yeah.
That
What's up?
Is a shameless plug of something that's going down. For all of you guys, obviously there's going to be a time frame from when we're here at ATA to when Brian gets this produced and we get this out there. But something big is happening in Ben's life. I mean, like, huge.
Ben O'Brien's life?
Ben O'Brien's life.
Do you know something I don't know?
Oh, I know something.
Holy crap. I signed an NDA, man.
Guys, coming soon to a podcast near you. The Hunting Collective.
Yeah.
He's joining the podcast brotherhood. He's going to take all these thoughts and things that he thinks about.
Good.
And he's going to just like get a mic and just talk by himself in his room.
And you can write me in the email and tell me exactly why you disagree.
He's got Ben is working on finalizing some materials and branding and such. But you were going to be launching a podcast this year,
first week of February.
We're finally going to listen to Joe.
Yeah. Joe told me 3 years ago when I first met Joe Rogan. And think about that. Think about Joe Rogan telling me, you should do a podcast, man. And you're like, nah, I'm good.
What I love about Joe is he sees the power of podcasting and its influence, and he doesn't feel threatened by other people.
He tells everybody that he knows, like,
Yep.
how many podcasts have been started in the comedy world or in the hunting world? Just, you know, I think
under his
Ranella will say,
influence.
I think Ranella will say, like, it was Joe's influence that made me start a podcast. So yeah, I mean, I like conversations. I feel like I'm pumped up after this conversation, just like I got to have a cool conversation with cool people. So I feel like why not go ahead and do that? But, yeah, first episode will be Ranella from our Mexico hunt, and that'll be
awesome, dude.
First week of February. Yeah.
When can the audience or those listening and tuning in, when can we expect to hear that first podcast? Or where's that going to live? Where can they go?
So the huntingcollective.com is being built right now. So you can find it there. It'll be on iTunes and Stitcher and all those things. We're looking at February 6th.
February 6th? Sweet.
Good.
I am excited to listen
now
to
that. Now I said that out loud. So
hey, it's out there.
Yes, it's out there.
I got to do it.
He's freaking sitting here. What does Jordan know that I don't?
Yeah. I thought maybe you had, like, I was pregnant or something. My wife was pregnant and she told you.
They're pregnant, everyone. They're having a baby.
We're doing
it. The Hunting Collective.
Yes.
Sweet.
I'm excited for that podcast.
Thanks, Ben.
Yeah,
Appreciate
man.
it. Stay gritty.
All right, buddy.
Don't be dead weight.
I got a lot of it.
Despite our ever-changing, ever-indignant world with its growing ignorance of and indifference to the ways of the wild, I remain a predator, pitying those who revel in artificiality and synthetic success while regarding me and my kind as relics of a time and place no longer valued or understood. I stalk a real world of dark wood and tall grass stirred by a restless wind blowing across sunlit water and beneath star-strewn sky. And on those occasions when I choose to kill, to claim some small part of nature's bounty for my own, I do so by choice, quickly, with the learned efficiency of a skilled hunter. Further, in my heart and mind, I know the truth and make no apologies for my actions or my place in time. Others around me may opt to eat only plants, nuts, and fruits. Still others may employ faceless strangers to procure their meats, their leather, their feathers, and all those niceties and necessities of life. Such is their right, of course, and I wish them well. All I ask in return is no one begrudge me, and all of us who may answer the primordial stirrings within our hunters' souls, my right to do some of these things myself. What you just heard is a quote from M.R. James. We truly live in a world that is largely ignorant and indifferent to the ways of the wild. And although some regard us as relics of a time and place no longer valued or understood, we have the opportunity to change the way these people view the hunter and the hunt. We can share our experiences and nature's bounty with those who employ these faceless strangers. And by so doing, we make a difference, not just for ourselves, but for the wild animals and the wild places we care so deeply about. Never stop sharing your passion for hunting and the outdoors. Our wild animals and our wild places depend on it.
This is Ty Stubblefield, and you're listening to the Gritty Bowmen.
Gritty Bowmen.